It's time for the finals of the Freestyle Chess GOAT Challenge. As you can see, I am not at home. I'm here in the Chess-based studios in Hamburg, not too far away from where the final is taking place. It's Fabiano Caruana against Magnus Carlsen, and there is 60,000 euros on the line. So it's going to be an extremely exciting final. Let's have a look at the first game of this final, which was played with Fabiano Caruana playing with the white pieces. As always, a new exciting position. Let's see what the players are making of this. So here, Fabiano goes for 1d4. Normal opening move. So also the bishop from c1 can be developed very soon. And Magnus plays the move g6 so that the queen on h8 immediately hits the pawn on d4. Knight f3, protecting that pawn. And now the move d6. And this already looks like almost like a normal game of chess. It's like a modern defense or Pirc defense. And normally you fianchetto your dark squared bishop to g7. That's not possible here, but now the queen replaces the bishop for that particular function. And after the move e4, black strikes back in the center with the move e5, hitting the pawn on d4. And this is already an interesting moment. How is white going to react? Is he going to take the pawn, advance the pawn, or just maintain the tension? Well, advancing the pawn is very interesting, but then maybe black wants to challenge the chain with the move f5 in the spirits of King's Indian type of play. Well, this didn't happen as Fabiano decided to take here on e5. D takes e5, d takes e5, and we have a symmetrical position with only one open file, so we can expect the major pieces coming over there very soon. White played here the move b3, creating some luft for the king, but also the bishop can be developed there very soon. As we will see, knight f6, and the bishop indeed goes to b2, hitting the pawn on e5 together with the knight. So Magnus reroutes the knight via g8 to f6 and then to d7. So it's protecting the pawn again. White played the move bishop to e2. So trying to activate the bishop. Probably the bishop will come to c4 to hit the pawn on f7. But now black plays here first the move f6. So that the other pieces, they don't have to care too much about that pawn on e5. And very soon they can try to become more active. White brings the knight into the game. Knight e3 heading for the d5 square. Bishop e7. And now, never forget that it's possible to castle for both sides. Let's see. Castling queenside is played here. So the rook comes to the d file. The other rook is standing on e1. So it really looks like a normal game. Well, black at this point cannot castle, of course, because the bishop is still there on c8. Well, knight e6 was played here. And well, you can see that, for instance, a move like knight d5 looks very active. The knight was on its way there. But then bishop c5 can be played, hitting the pawn on f2. And therefore, instead, white decides to keep the knight, at least for the moment, on e3. And first, the queen moves out of the corner. It's really badly placed, so why not just centralize it again? And so does black. Black also brings the queen out from its very poor square. Now, with the bishop, they are looking at this diagonal. Maybe at some point, bishops can be swapped. Bishop c4 was played. But now knight b6. This is a nice move as you're hitting the bishop. And, well, this bishop was planning to take the knight. But you're no longer going to do that because the bishop from c8 is now defending that knight on e6. Well, white played here the move knight d5. So this is the first moment of the game where pieces are likely going to be swapped. And, well, black had the chance here to take that bishop with a knight. I think it's an interesting move. Just in general, bishops are quite good in open positions, but was not played by Magnus. He had a different idea. He played here first the move bishop a3, believing that later on he can take anyway himself that bishop. But let's see what happens. So white here decided to take on a3. Now the queen captures back on a3 with check, and the king goes to b1. But now we understand why White decided to take on a3, because the pawn on f6 is hanging, and you have to protect that pawn. You don't want to lose it. Probably also don't want to take on d5. It really helps White to put more pressure by recapturing with one of the pieces. So the queen goes all the way back to f8. Very surprising idea, I would say. I was thinking that putting the rook back on f8 is maybe more natural, so that the queen stays active near the white king. But queen f8 was played, and well, there are still ideas for black to play for an advantage. At some point you may take on c4 or just play the move c6 to get rid of that annoying knight on d5. Anyway, White played here the move a4. So is the idea really here to advance the pawn to a5 and clarify the situation in the center? c6 played, attacking the knight on d5, and after knight takes b6, a takes b6 is played. Here we see that black consciously had decided not to castle any time earlier. I mean, it was not even possible, but keeping the bishop on c8 is absolutely fine if you can activate the rook via that a file. So that's an interesting idea. Here, strangely enough, Caruana decides now to take on e6, giving up that bishop for the knight, but that seems to really help black to entangle. But critical moment of the game, because here Magnus misses a big opportunity. He played by far the most natural move. He just recaptured with the bishop, getting this bishop into the game. But apparently taking with the rook is really strong. And why is this move so good? Well, there are all of a sudden tactical ideas here for black based on that rook on a8, which all of a sudden comes into the game. There's a plan to play b5. If that pawn from a4 is gone, let's say it has to take, otherwise your queen side will be opened anyway, then the queen can come in, and together with the rook there are mating threats, so things are much more dangerous. After, let's say, queen d3, you can play here even the move b5, and now things are getting incredibly sharp. But the big advantage of having the rook on e6 is that you prevent the white queen ever to come to d6 with check, forcing the exchange of queens. Well, this is incredibly complicated. I was analyzing this a bit, and honestly I think both players considered it, but the lines which may follow now, they are so difficult to see in advance. For instance, if you do play queen d8, white really wants to get the queens off the board. Now queen b4 is a good idea to put pressure on that king. The pawn on b3 is not a good defender, but if you go in with your rook to d7, the rook cannot be taken. There are all sorts of threats like rook c7 can come, but apparently the best move here is king a7. Guys, this is so difficult to find. You're getting out of the back rank, so you're threatening to take the rook. If the rook would go now to c7, there is rook d6 to attack the queen. The rook is about to join the attack here. There are ideas to take on a4, and apparently this is really good for black. But okay, it didn't happen. Instead, bishop takes e6 was played here. This is the most natural move to complete your development. And after queen d3, once again, white is intending to enter with the queen on d6, force the exchange of queens. But then king c7 is played, so Magnus wants to play it in a much more positional type of way. So he's controlling all the relevant squares on the d file. There's no chance for white to infiltrate there. Queen c3 was played. And how is black going to continue here? Well, I was thinking maybe queen a3 is a spectacular idea with the plan of taking with the rook on a4, because once again the pawn on b3 is sort of pinned and the queen on c3 is unprotected. But rook e3, defending the queen, is a good move. And now, frankly, it's not clear what the queen on a3 is going to do very soon. But after rook takes a4, spectacular idea. Well, it's only a repetition of moves. Your rook down, but with bishop a2 check, the king can't go away because of the queen on a3. But after king a1, bishop b3, discover check, king b1, bishop a2, back, and so on, we see that it's just going to be a repetition of moves. So instead, queen c5 was played, and Magnus is playing in a Magnus way. He wants to have clarity. He wants to get chess 960 or freestyle chess, how it's called this tournament. He wants to get it to normal type of positions. He's really hoping that queen takes c5 is going to be played, because after b takes c5 you do have a double pawn which can be used very nicely to exert pressure against the pawn on b3, and with the rook on a8 and the bishop there's really a bit of pressure, and the bishop is probably better than that knight. But white doesn't have to take. Rook e3 was played here, maintaining the balance, and after rook e8, black is trying to gain control over that open file. Rooks were exchanged, and the king comes to b2. Everything is nicely defended. Rook to d1. This looks as if black is much more active here. But after rook e1, everything is under control. The rooks are neutralizing each other. Also, the queens are doing that. So Magnus said, well, I don't want to exchange pieces. I mean, after rook d8, well, the pawn on f2 is threatened to be taken. So white just went back with the rook to e3. And here, on move 25, the players agreed to a draw. Looks like a relatively calm draw, but as you can see in these 25 moves, a lot of exciting things were happening. And maybe this was a small missed chance for Magnus. I'm not sure. Very complicated. Machines are telling us what is good and bad. But I think it was not easy to see at all, because world's number 1 and 2, they didn't see that best move, rook takes e6. Well, let's see what's going to happen tomorrow in the second game of this final with 60,000 euros on the line. Make sure to come back to the channel and see what's happening in the final of the Freestyle Chess GOAT Challenge.